Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone joining us from all over the world. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the fourth episode of the Smart Space series on the theme of entrepreneurial opportunities and jobs in the space industry. This series is like a set of panels hosted at Saïd Business School, bringing key players to debate on the current issues in this rapidly evolving sector. I am Maria Zubeldia, Director of the Entrepreneurship Centre at Saïd Business School. First, I would like to thank all my colleagues at the Space Initiative, Mark, René, Lucas, David, and Michele, and the conference team for all their support in making this happen. Like story has shown us, after an initial phase of exploration of a new environment and consolidation of a specific technology, what follows is an explosion of businesses to exploit the new opportunities offered by this new environment. This is the normal cycle for innovation. Under the name of New Space, there is an ongoing revolution in the space sector with new players, commercial entrepreneurs, businesses, entering a domain traditionally occupied by institutional players to exploit the new opportunities opening in front of them. There are currently over 1,000 companies worldwide working to create the rapidly growing new space economy. These entrepreneurs and companies are driving the commoditization and monetization of space. For instance, satellites that capture geospatial data can have many different applications across different industries. Costs have dropped by about 60% to 80%, what creates many different opportunities for entrepreneurs. To discuss this with us, today we couldn't have a better panel. We are very privileged to have these stellar speakers who will offer their complementary views on the matter. Dear panelists, welcome. On behalf of Saïd Business School, I am very grateful to you for your time, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on what is the current landscape for entrepreneurs in the space sector. Let's start by introducing the panel. Harriet Brettle is Head of Business Analysis at Astroscale, where she is developing commercial solutions for space sustainability and addressing the growing threat of space debris. She serves as chair of the Space Generation Advisory Council, a global non-profit that supports students and young professionals to connect to the wider space industry. In 2019, Harriet co-founded the London Space Network to strengthen the UK space community. Harriet previously worked in finance at the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York before pursuing a master's in planetary science and pivoting to follow her passion for working within the space sector. With a background in finance and space science, she's passionate about interdisciplinary collaboration and sustainability within the space ecosystem. Well, she brings with us a wonderful range of experiences and knowledge. Welcome, Harriet. Dr. Joanna Hart is the Harwell Space Cluster Development Manager, working to grow the Harwell Space Cluster and support growth across the UK space sector. With over 100 space organizations at Harwell campus, from startups to multinationals, Joanna has a good insight into the entrepreneurial opportunities and jobs in the space industry. Joanna has worked in the space sector for over 7 years. First at the Satellite Applications Catapult as Head of Evaluation and Impact, then moving to her current role at the Science and Technology Facilities Council, part of UK Research and Innovation, in November 2017. Joanna's first career was in investment banking, advising fund managers to buy and sell telecoms shares, and she holds an MA in physics and DPhil in particle physics from the University of Oxford. Her thesis included a section on the central tracking detector, which is now a museum piece at the entrance to her office building, where she brings a fantastic range of experiences that will give us useful insights for this panel too. Welcome back to Oxford, Joanna.
Thank you.
Josephine Millward is the head of research at Seraphim. Seraphim Capital is a space-focused venture capital fund based in London. They also have a space accelerator to help early-stage startups get investment ready. They have supported over 60 space tech companies through the Space Fund and Accelerator. Josephine joined Seraphim 3 years ago after more than a decade of Wall Street equity research covering the aerospace sector. She established a Washington, D.C. office at the Benchmark Company and developed her research coverage of defense stocks by doing primary research on commercial off-the-shelf technologies such as space, drones, and robots that became mission critical to the US government after 9/11. In addition to heading up research at Seraphim, she's part of the investment team and works closely with their LPs and startups to validate their tech and facilitate partnerships. She brings a wonderful range of experiences too and understanding about funding space ventures. Welcome, Josephine. And last but not least, we have with us Raphael Jorda, the founding director and CEO of Open Cosmos. As CEO and founder, Raphael leads the Open Cosmos team. From leading the team to delivering the first satellite mission within 8 months to managing the expanding team and range of customers today, Raphael has overseen the overall company strategy and directed its execution, all whilst working towards the original mission of democratizing access to space. After studying aerospace engineering at the Polytechnic University of Catalunya in Barcelona and completing an MBA, Raphael has worked at large corporations such as Airbus Defence and Space, as well as small innovative space startups such as Zero to Infinity. His desire to make space more accessible led him to develop Open Cosmos while at the prestigious Entrepreneur First Incubator Program in July 2015. For his work leading Open Cosmos, Raphael was recognized as Entrepreneur of the Year 2018 by Euroconsult. The story of Open Cosmos is quite remarkable, from idea to successful scale-up in 3 years. From a highly motivated student stratospheric balloon team, experimenting with satellite hardware, to a leading international new space scale-up with almost 60 employees in less than 4 years. Its first satellite in orbit and many more in the pipeline. Thanks to Raphael's leadership and entrepreneurial spirit, Open Cosmos is now seen as one of the leading companies bringing the promise of commercial space to the world, making space accessible to help solve the world's biggest challenges. Well, it's the corporate vision of Open Cosmos, but above all, is the dream of its visionary. Welcome, Raphael.
Thank you.
Wow, I hope now you are as excited as I am. This panel will be delighted to take your questions, which you can post in the chat at any time. The format will be that our panelists will each take turns to respond to 2 questions that I will offer, after which I will open up the floor for 20 minutes or so for audience Q&A. To our online audience, please post your questions in the chat function at your platform, including your name and where you are joining us from. So moving to the debates, let's start with the first question. From your unique perspectives, what are the most relevant innovation opportunities in the industry, and how can entrepreneurs further explore those opportunities and identify new business models? Okay, let me now turn to Harriet.
Thanks so much, Maria. It's a real pleasure to be speaking here today. Thank you so much for having me join the panel. So I first wanted to start off in terms of thinking about innovation within the space industry itself. And I think one of the things that's really exciting that we're seeing in the space industry today is really integrating space into the wider ecosystem and thinking about it as an extension of the environment in which companies are operating. I know we've got some fantastic panelists here who can talk more about the downstream opportunities and satellite applications, but I want to talk a bit more about the in-orbit ecosystem and thinking about where we're heading there as well. So some of the things that are really exciting to see that we're seeing developing in the space industry is how we're moving to think more holistically about space sustainability and the environment in which we're operating. And so that really moves us away from thinking about a throwaway culture in space to thinking more sustainably about how we can make the best use of satellites in orbit and providing in-orbit servicing to create a more kind of foundational platform within space that can help to generate those services that we're relying on in everyday life. So when we think about a satellite, it's launched into space, it does its job, it provides its services, but what happens next? And at the moment, what we're seeing is a kind of single-use culture when it comes to the use of satellites. But we're seeing this real growth in the emergence of in-orbit servicing. So looking at ways that you can extend the life of satellites, looking at refueling, looking longer term in terms of things like upgrading and repairing, and really thinking more holistically about how we're using satellites in orbit and making the most of them. So there's an incredible opportunity there in terms of technology innovation, but then kind of coming back to the second part of that question, which was around kind of new business models that really enables us to think more creatively about what it means to be a business in space and what does that look like. And that's something that's very much at the forefront of my mind working at Astroscale. So we're a startup that's really focused on space sustainability, looking at developing both debris removal services to mitigate the growth of space debris in the future, but also looking at in-orbit servicing more generally and making the most of satellites that are in orbit. When it comes to developing the business cases around space sustainability, that's something where we have to think really creatively, really leveraging lessons that we see in terms of business models on Earth, in terms of how we can incentivize operators and organizations to think about the environment and return that environment back to its natural state, and really think holistically about these kinds of issues so that we're ensuring that operators are recognizing the impact of these issues, both to their day-to-day operations, but also thinking about the industry and the environment more holistically. So there's a whole host of things there that I'd be very happy to kind of dive into more as the questions progress. I'll stop now and hand over to the panelists. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Harriet, for those comments. I mean, what comes across quite clearly is the importance of space sustainability, and actually is coming from someone who has a lot of experience on that topic around the space ecosystem. So thank you. Okay, next, let me turn, please, to Joanna.
Thank you very much, and a pleasure to be back at Oxford University today. As the Harwell Space Cluster Development Manager, I engage with companies at the cutting edge of innovation in the UK space sector on a daily basis. As mentioned, I work for the Science and Technology Facilities Council, which is part of UK Research and Innovation, which brings together all of the UK's research councils and Innovate UK to convene, catalyse and invest to build a thriving and inclusive research and innovation ecosystem across the UK. Harwell Campus is one element of this wide-ranging vision, and I'm very much charged with developing this Harwell Space Cluster here. This involves supporting companies that are already here to grow and using the international profile of the cluster as a mechanism to attract collaborators, customers and potential inward investors to the UK. Harwell Space Cluster includes over 100 space organisations, a couple of which are here today, that cover the full range of space capability, from those developing equipment to go into space to those using space data to develop applications here on Earth. We also have companies that have taken space capabilities to completely new markets. The companies range in size from startups through SMEs, some of which have grown from 5 to 50 employees at Harwell Campus, Open Cosmos amongst them, to multinationals that have a small presence here, but they're really keen to engage with the innovation that's taking place. So to directly answer the question, in terms of the most relevant innovation opportunities, as you all know, the dynamics of space is changing from large, highly complex, highly engineered satellites that stay in space for over a decade. They're being moved over to multiple smaller satellites in large constellations with a far shorter replacement cycle. In turn, this means that there will be far more sensors enabling brand new data to be acquired from space. So where I think that there are new innovation opportunities is in that sensor development and the use of the data that those sensors will enable. And in terms of how entrepreneurs can explore them and identify new business models, there's a couple of things I'd highlight. For early stage entrepreneurs, do have a look at the very successful European Space Agency business incubation centres. The one in the UK is managed by the Science and Technology Facilities Council. Not only does it offer early stage funding, but fantastic advice and support for entrepreneurs on the first stage of their journey. There have been almost 100 incubatees over the last 10 years, And collectively, the alumni has gone on to raise over 77 million in equity investment. Secondly, as entrepreneurs come up with an idea, they need to test it with the relevant market, learn the language of that market so they can actively design the solution and make sure that it addresses the needs of the particular sector they're going into. At Harwell campus, we've got complementary clusters in energy tech and health tech to enable the companies to be able to engage with those sectors so that they can really develop their space-enabled solution to make sure that it's really applicable for what they're doing. The Satellite Applications Catapult also runs a number of workshops to encourage space companies to engage with other sectors. So across the cluster, there's lots of opportunities for entrepreneurs to engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Lots of insights, lots of fantastic thoughts on sensor development opportunities, around sensor development. Well, next, let me turn, please, to Josephine.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Let me start by saying there has never been a better time to start a business in space. For the first time in history, we have the private sector leading financing and innovation. And the best part is the government remains extremely supportive. To answer your question, Maria, I see innovation across the entire space ecosystem, from launch, small sats, all the way to ground infrastructure, AI, machine learning for data analytics. But since I'm the only venture capital on the panel, I thought I could share an investor's perspective. So as a VC, we see lots of startups pitching great technologies, but frankly, not everyone's always clear on the business case. So I would challenge entrepreneurs to think a little differently. Start with what problem am I trying to solve? And is my technology the right fit? Do your customer discovery early. Now, let me touch on one area I'm very excited about, and I'm going to echo what Joanna said. It's Earth observation. Innovation in small sats and sensors has made a wide range of new data sets available. So I'm talking about synthetic aperture radar, infrared, multispectral, even radio frequency. And one of the biggest problems to go after, in my opinion, is how do we use all these new data to combat climate change? We can use satellite to detect greenhouse gas emissions, to figure out who's polluting and where the polluter is located. We can monitor and track deforestation and detect illegal logging. I think geospatial data is going to play a very important role in protecting our environment. And this is just the beginning. There are so many more new business cases. I think the challenge for us is how do we rapidly process and make sense of massive amount of new data? How do we make them user-friendly? And how do we fuse different data sets to make the best predictions? I'll stop there and be happy to take your questions later.
Well, thank you, Josephine, for those provoking insights. Since you bring an investor experience, entrepreneurs should definitely listen to your advice. Well, last, let me turn, please, to Raphael.
Hi. Yeah, I think that definitely there are very, very big areas for innovation and opportunities in the space sector right now, both on the downstream and on the upstream. Understanding the upstream for all the hardware and the sensors, there is now the opportunity actually to fly those sensors faster and much more affordably than ever. And these will provide new data sets that can be combined with other existing data sets to address the real challenges, right? So I think that there is a great opportunity for that people that has been working on deep tech, new innovative sensors, both on optics, on telecommunications, IoT devices, and so on. Then on the other stream, on the downstream, there is a great opportunity for processing all of the data from the diverse sets of satellites and being able to leverage particularly artificial intelligence and other analytic techniques to address the end user needs. I couldn't agree more with the previous mentions from panelists in saying that challenges like climate change, like optimization of use of resources, of energy, and many of these big challenges that we are facing as humanity can only be addressed if we put all of that processing capability, analytics tools, and AI, leveraging all of the data sets from satellites to good use. And that's where probably the biggest opportunity for entrepreneurship in the space sector is at the moment.
Well, thank you, Raphael. Thanks so much for such an interesting view, especially from an entrepreneur who has sort of overcome some of those challenges. Well, when I talk to entrepreneurs, I always try to find out what is the problem they are trying to solve, like you just mentioned, and who is suffering from that problem. Not only that, but also who is actually trying to do something about it in a proactive way, as it seems that they will be the most interested ones in that solution. However, when thinking of a space, it seems more difficult to identify who is the problem owner. Also, knowing the agile way of working of an entrepreneur, how a space entrepreneur can cope with such a regulated environment. I mean, moving to the second question, I'm intrigued to find out about what are the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs within the space sector and what can they do to overcome them? And also, what are the main resources? Because you all cover different perspectives, but you bring a lot of knowledge and experience around that. So what are the main resources that they can leverage throughout their journey? Let me now change the order and turn to Raphael.
Yeah, so even though it has become easier than ever, I think, to start a company in the space sector, it's still challenging. And the sector has some peculiarities that makes it particularly difficult. One of the most important challenges I think entrepreneurs face is that when working with hardware, and particularly the entrepreneurs in the space domain that are more on the upstream, the development cycles, even if they have shortened, are still longer than what the market expects. So if you were able to fly a sensor generating a new data set that someone in the transportation industry requires, shortening that time to market, making sure that your data is available for those applications faster, it's critical. And that goes always linked to capital, right? Access to capital to be able to fund the development of that innovation during the early days. I think that there has been massive improvements in this area. In the UK, where we are based, there has been a growth of the venture capital community understanding more and more and supporting more space companies like ours into our growth path with this. Then there is also the support from government that seeing these technologies like key strategic national capabilities. And then I would also say that there is a strong collaboration among companies within the space sector, which is also key to overcome some of these challenges. At Open Cosmos, we are really proud of actually being able to deliver entire missions from the beginning to end for our customers. So we design the satellites that they need, we manufacture them, we test them, and we put into orbit, which remove a massive pain both for those startups that are looking at flying new sensors, and also both for those companies that are looking at developing new value propositions, business models based on proprietary data sets, for instance, right? So that support within the space community and not trying to do everything alone, but actually working alongside with specialized partners, it's proving to be a true help towards these big challenges that entrepreneurs in this sector usually face at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Raphael. That's a brilliant answer. Thank you for your comments. I think access to capital can be expanded into many different industries as a big challenge. And I think maybe Josephine has some insight around that. Let me turn, please, to you, Josephine.
Thank you, Maria. I think the biggest challenge for a startup is to have a truly unique and differentiated value proposition. So I see so many startups out there doing the same things, and they struggle to articulate, how they're different. And I'll give you an example. We're tracking more than 100 small launch startups, and I think there's over 140 small sat constellations. So if you struggle to, with your unique value proposition, you're going to have a hard time fundraising. So how do you overcome this problem? I will go back to what I was talking about earlier. You have to start with the question of what problem am I solving, and what do I bring to the table that's different and special. And I will go an even step further. Have early technical and commercial validation. So that's going to help a lot with fundraising. And one more thing for non-US startups. I think non-US startups often have to compete with better funded US startups with access to a much larger home market. I would say if you have a really good idea, dream big. Usually UK companies are very focused on the domestic, or most European companies are very focused on their domestic market. I would say dream big and think globally, and don't say no to government support. There's a ton of government support out there right now. It's a great way to raise R&D funding and also get to know a potentially important customer in the future.
Well, thank you, Josephine. I mean, everything that you touched upon is just like so relevant. And I constantly talk with entrepreneurs about, how is your value proposition, why is unique, why you as a team, as you mentioned also, what's different and special from your proposal, and the commercial validation also. You could apply that to so many different industries that I can think of. So that's super interesting. Thank you very much for that. Okay, let me turn please afterwards to Joanna.
Thanks very much. The wonderful thing about entrepreneurs in the space sector is their technical knowledge and their expertise. However, to some extent, this is also a challenge, as typically they're not always as strong at explaining what they do to a non-technical audience, which is essential to engage with customers and investors. And you've just heard from Josephine and Raphael talking about how you've got to get that pitch right and that value proposition right. So it's really important for space entrepreneurs to engage with non-space sectors to make sure that their technology and capability addresses a problem in the right way and isn't just squeezed in to form an almost right solution. The other point I'd make is that space is rarely about one element, or is rarely the only element in a solution. So it's really important to find collaborators in and importantly beyond the space sector, so that the space capability is combined with other elements to make it a true solution. For example, one of the companies at Harwell Space Cluster, Darwin Innovation, it's funded through the European Space Agency, is currently bringing satellite and telecoms networks together to deliver ubiquitous connectivity. This is not without its challenges, but is essential for autonomous vehicles. Similarly, we've got SciHealth, which is bringing space data together with clinical data to understand when users of their app should be getting direct sun exposure and when to put sunscreen on or go inside. So really, in terms of my role, I spend a lot of time bringing organisations together so that they can explore these collaboration opportunities and enable engagement with other clusters, so they can really make sure that they're sorting or refining that solution so that they've absolutely got their value proposition clear. And that's the key piece in the startup phase. But now I'm also looking at how do we take companies with 50 employees and help them really scale up to the 250 people plus. And that's going to require bringing lots of different organisations together across the whole of the public sector. Finally, I just note the broader entrepreneurial challenge that's not limited to the space sector, and that's the lack of diversity in entrepreneurs. It won't come as a surprise to anyone that there are more males than females across the C-suite at the companies within the Harwell Space Cluster. That said, there are some great exceptions, such as Lucy Kennedy, who's CEO of Spot It. Lucy was an engineer. She worked in the energy sector, and now she's using space data to advise companies where to site renewable energy facilities. We also have some amazingly talented women coming up through the ranks across the space sector. And you can see at least one of them and more today. And it's really important that we continue to see more coming through. I was really heartened to see in the recent UK Space Agency Commission Size and Health study that a third of the space workforce is now female. I'd really like to see that at 50% by 2030. And that's just one element of diversity. There's so much more that can be done. And it's starting to happen across the sector following the space census, which was carried out by the Space Skills Alliance last year. So if you've got an innovative idea, please don't be put off because you don't appear to conform to the norm. There are lots of specific mechanisms to help, such as the Innovate UK Women in Innovation Awards. Just ask. It's really key that we get as much diversity to really get those great ideas coming through. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Joanna. We couldn't be more aligned from Saïd Business School perspective. And actually, with those science-based entrepreneurs or tech-based entrepreneurs that we deal with, we very often put them together with business background students from the school who complement really well their skills and overcome that barrier that you just referred to. And in terms of diversity, we are also pushing a lot on that. So that's very, very interesting. Thank you for that. Let me finally turn, please, to Harriet.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. So I think the panelists have covered some fantastic points already. So I'm a little bit more limited in terms of what I can add, but just a few points to make there. I think Josephine made a really, really important point in terms of, understanding the problem that your customer is facing and identifying how you can help mitigate or solve that problem. And I think there's an important kind of nuance there, which is one, understanding the challenges that companies and potential customers are facing right now, but also understanding how those challenges are going to evolve and change in the future. And that's something that's really critical for the space industry, because we're seeing huge changes in terms of how we're using space, how we're operating in space, also how that space environment is adapting to the evolving changes as well. So we're seeing an incredible increase in the number of satellites that are being launched, particularly into low Earth orbit, which is increasing, congestion and operational challenges for operators, which is only going to increase in the future. So really being able to understand how those challenges are going to evolve is really key. The second point I wanted to make, again, touches on something that Josephine mentioned, which is kind of thinking about how space companies can really be commercially driven. Often we think of space companies coming up with a cool technology to do something in space and then running with that without necessarily thinking, is space the best way, this space technology, is this the best way to solve that problem? And so I think there's a kind of a mindset shift that we need to have in the space community more generally, which is thinking about space as a place to do business rather than something in and of itself. So trying to get out of that ivory tower of the space community and really see how space applications and space technology can be really integrated into the wider value chain. In terms of the support side, I'd say space is a small and tight-knit community. There's some fantastic opportunities, to create networks and then provide support wherever you are in the stages of a company's development. Organizations, like the Harwell Space Cluster, which is a fantastic hub of space activity. Organizations like the Satellite Applications Catapult. Then there's a whole host of funding opportunities in the UK as well as elsewhere. So there's a lot of support and funding available for the space industry right now, which makes it a really exciting place to be.
Well, thank you, Harriet, for so many interesting suggestions. Thank you so much. Well, with that, I will open the floor to the audience for questions. Next, I want to pose a question that is sent to us by Robin, Oxford. Is there a need to focus more on attracting parallel talent from other industries rather than training younger people? From the panel, please feel free to jump in.
Perhaps I can kick off. One of the challenges we've all got is many of the skills that we want in space are very similar to skills that people want in other industries as well. So there is a bit of, it's not always the case that there is parallel talent that we can bring in. But I think in reality, we need to be doing all of the different mechanisms. There is a skills gap across the whole of the UK and globally. And we need to make sure that we're training young people up. So we've got the people for the future. We need to make sure that we are bringing people in and upskilling them so they've got the capability that we need within the space sector and beyond. And also thinking a little bit more laterally about the type of people that we can bring in. And I think there's a whole range of people in the space sector. They're not all rocket scientists. We also have lots of people in marketing, finance, project management, HR. They're all absolutely essential to delivering on to deliver the growth that we're looking for in the UK space sector.
Wow, thank you, Joanna. Any other perspective from any other panelists that you would like to add something?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in just to echo what Joanna was saying. I think it's interesting to see that, you know, at least a couple of us in this panel, maybe more, have come from a non-traditional space background, right? And are now working in the space industry. And I think there's really something to say there in terms of, you know, the skills that are needed in the space industry in order to develop. And that's something we've really seen at Astroscale is, you know, the challenges that we're facing in space in some ways are similar to some of the challenges that we're facing on Earth. So how can we learn from other industries and bring that experience into the space sector? So I think there's a huge opportunity there to bring in that talent and expertise from other industries and apply that to the space industry as well.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, moving towards the next question coming from Adam at Oxford. What are the main areas of private investment in space startups in 2021? I guess this one goes for Josephine.
So the way I look at it is I'm really following areas where we have the greatest needs. So so space debris is becoming a serious problem. So debris removal. And I think cybersecurity is also another big area. Our small sats are extremely vulnerable to attacks. And geospatial data analytics. What do we do with all the new data? All the new business applications.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other panelists would like to add anything on this question? No, you are good to go. Okay, next question is coming from Anania from UAE. Are there any barriers to entry into the space industry for marketing professionals from a different background? That was somehow mentioned by Harriet, but anybody else who would like to answer?
Well, just to encourage actually people from other sectors to apply. In our case at Open Cosmos, we've built the company with people that come from very diverse backgrounds and other sectors. And in the marketing professionals, I think it's particularly important when finding these new business opportunities actually to have knowledge in a diverse range of areas. So having background in the energy sector or having backgrounds in the telecommunications industry, all of these actually enriches the space companies that people are joining. So I think it's critical that we all start looking at the space companies just as other kind of companies to work, not only for rocket scientists, as Harriet said before.
Thank you, Raphael. Yes, Josephine, please go ahead.
I just want to say, if you're interested in working in space, if you want to work in space, go out and educate yourself and basically know your value proposition. What do you bring to the table? And there are no barriers. You know, space is open for business. There's so many job openings right now. And we need people with very diverse skill sets, everything from marketing, finance, human resources. So, go for it.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think it contributes to open our minds about in the space sector, they also need other professionals, yeah, not necessarily only engineers, and of course, many different backgrounds. Well, thank you. Moving towards the next, coming from Steve from Illinois. Are there any plans for global space innovation expositions or competitions? Who would like to answer that question? Joanna, please go ahead.
So there are lots of opportunities to engage with the UK space sector, either through the UK. There's a whole range of conferences. We've got SpaceCom coming up. There is also the UK Space Conference later this year. So lots of opportunities to engage. We also try and reach out internationally as much as we can. I attend quite a lot of international conferences. Also, my colleagues from the UK's Department of International Trade. We have people around the world who are all engaging locally to really bring in those opportunities and can make those connections internationally to the UK environment. Are there any specific competitions? Really, the key thing is to look at funding opportunities. If you're based in the UK, look at Innovate, look at the European Space Agency, look at UK Space Agency. All of them run competitions. If you've got something that's a bit more defence focused, have a look at DASA and DSTL. There's open competitions, there's specific ones. Just keep an eye on what's coming through. If you are international, there are also opportunities for UK international collaborations and different funding sources for that as well. So it's about just finding those opportunities and seeing what's going on. There's a lot out there. The biggest challenge is finding the one that's right for you.
Thank you, Joanna. Anybody willing to add anything on this question, or shall I move to the next? Josephine, please go ahead.
I was going to say the US government actually offers a ton of grant money and small business innovation contracts. Some of them are available to non-US companies, believe it or not. So this is both for civil and defense applications. Let me share. I can share some resources with you, Maria, after this call, if you want to post it. But there are opportunities to explore in the US.
Okay, that would be great, and then we can maybe share them within the relevant groups on social media for the person inquiring. Perfect. Okay, moving towards the next question from Ricardo in Chile. Is there an online space innovation program like a MOOC or similar, a place to start with the foundations? Who would like to take this one?
There's certainly there's certainly plenty of MOOCs. Open University has quite a few. There are other courses available, quite a few training providers and things like that. So I'd start having a look at Open University ones that are available, and then I'd look more broadly. I think there's plenty around.
Perfect. Thank you, Joanna. And moving towards the next, Álvaro from Oxford and Spain. What do space entrepreneurs need most in terms of support from the government to thrive? Which areas could be improved?
Yeah, I think that it depends on the stage at the development of your company that you are in. At very early stage, I think that governments are very effective actually at providing R&D support. There are grants, particularly in the UK, for instance, through Innovate UK, through the UK Space Agency, through the European Space Agency, that help actually develop the technologies and the R&D during those early stages. Then when you are more at sort of a scaling up stage, I think that it's particularly important that the government acts as an anchor customer, particularly with contracts of a size and duration that are relevant for companies like ours, actually, to be able to deploy more complex infrastructure, provide better services, and be able also to raise funding and unlock other customers on the back of such an anchored, reliable customer such as government. So I think that the government can play those two roles depending on the stage of the company that it's involving.
Brilliant. Thank you, Raphael. I'm moving towards the next because I'm conscious that there are plenty of questions and I would like to cover as many as we can. So next one coming from Robin at Oxford. For Joanna, please. You mentioned the importance of diversity. Are the current Harwell initiatives for promoting intersectionality?
So across UKRI, there is a real drive to improve diversity in every different way across the whole of the research and innovation ecosystem. And there is a lot of work going on as the best ways of delivering that and the best ways to encourage people. Are there any specific initiatives at Harwell? Nothing that's obvious at the moment, but behind the scenes, we are working really actively to improve access to skills, to really make the campus as diverse as possible, to encourage people and ensure that everybody feels welcome to be part of the campus and the cluster. So lots of activity. I would say everybody's still learning. It's a journey, and definitely the will and the desire is there to really change the environment so that it is truly open. We've truly got diversity, and we're really getting those new thoughts, those new perspectives on everything, because that's how we're going to drive the UK space sector and UK economy more broadly.
Yeah, I would love to add to that. I mean, we are a case of a company that took the great decision, I think, during the early days of setting up in Harwell campus. And ecosystems like this one are absolutely key for exactly what the question was about, which is making sure that you connect with people from other sectors and from other industries. And in our case, actually, we have customers within Harwell campus. We have partners and organizations that we partner with, like the Catapult, the European Space Agency, and others that are also nearby. And all of these actually, together with the activities that are related to the energy sector and the medical sector, generates an ecosystem of diversity that definitely in Harwell campus we've found to be very, very helpful towards the early stages of development of the company, and now also during our growth phase.
Well, thank you, both Raphael and Joanna, for that answer. Moving towards the next one, coming from Connor at Portsmouth. What could academia do to support the space industry? How can universities better work with startups and public bodies? I guess that one, I mean, I could answer that one. And I mean, one of the initiatives that we are working on after this series that we are experiencing today, we've also launched an elective for the MBA students. And I guess it's about bringing business background to these technology-based entrepreneurs with the technical ideas to support them on making their ideas more sustainable and more successful in the future, and to help them with making a value proposition, to solve a relevant problem, and cover all these issues that panelists rose today, which are very important. But I would be super happy if anybody, any other panelist would like to add something to see your perspective on this too.
Yeah, I'd be happy to add on this. So at Astroscale, we've collaborated with a number of universities, and I think it's really key. There's a whole host of, early stage R&D, but also really exciting innovation that you see coming out of universities. And we've had some great value of collaborating with different organizations. So the first was with the University of Southampton through the Sprint program. So that is really connecting academic institutions with SMEs in the UK and providing opportunities and funding to support collaborative efforts. So, that's a fantastic program that really supports that bridge between, the commercial space and academia side. And the second collaboration we've been doing is with the University of Northumbria, again, looking at other industries and seeing how we can apply those to the space sector. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for academic institutions to engage with startups and also commercial space companies. I think one of the challenges the face there is kind of understanding the different priorities and timescales that things tend to work through in those different institutions. So understanding, what startups or companies are looking for and how you can frame academic research to really create value for those companies is incredibly important.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Harriet. We'll take those points on board. Moving to the next, coming from Jake, Ghana. What is the feasibility? Sorry, there is a previous one I want to cover. Otherwise, I will jump, and I don't want to miss it. From Indira, from Oxford, for Joanna and Harriet, please. How can robotics engineer contribute to Astroscale's challenge to remove debris?
Oh, this is a great question. So thank you so much for asking. Firstly, we have vacancies. We need more engineers to join our team. So please do check out our website in terms of, coming to work for Astroscale directly. But more generally, I think there's a real growth in demand for, the industry, thinking about space sustainability and creative ways that we can address the space debris problem. It's a business challenge, it's a policy challenge, but it's also a technology challenge. There's a whole host of technological innovation we need across the industry to really help to tackle this problem and be able to offer services at a commercially viable price point. Please do check out Astroscale, as well as a lot of other organizations that are kind of driving forward in this field as well.
Thank you, Harriet. Joanna, anything to add?
So just to say, have a look at harwellhub.com, which has all the vacancies for Harwell campus. STFC through UKRI also advertises all of its vacancies, some of which are in RAL space. We're always looking for great engineers. So do have a look, keep your eye on LinkedIn for any of the space companies. That's generally where people post their job opportunities. So there are engineers, everybody's short of them. So there have to be opportunities out there. It's just making sure that we try and connect people with those opportunities.
Great, thank you. I'm sure Indira is super excited after your answer. And I'm coming back to you, Jake. Jake, coming from Ghana. What is the feasibility of a space startup without initial capital in Africa? Who would like to answer?
I would say that it's definitely possible, and actually in Africa and anywhere. Even for the hardware upstream side of the business, which is usually more capital intensive, and we are an example of it. At Open Cosmos, actually, we started first focusing on customer, with the first contract, which was a stepping stone actually towards our vision. We secured the revenue to start recruiting some people. Then an opportunity to launch a first satellite came along, and we on the back of that opportunity, and after delivering that first satellite that we even bootstrapped, we were able actually to raise our first round of funding. So there is a possibility in these days with how the economics of space are starting to work to find that path. And it's even easier if you are focused on the downstream side, on all of the software applications, the refinery of data into information, because then at the end of the day, there you are working with data coming from assets in space, but that just require your time, your capabilities developing the software, and the computing capabilities to be able to derive those services.
Well, thank you, Raphael. Josephine wants to add something. Please go ahead.
I would say it really depends on what's your business idea. There's a lot of focus right now to connect the unconnected, and Africa is, a big area of focus for a lot of the key players. So if you have a good idea and you have real customers, you'll eventually, be able to raise funding. So I would go back to, anything is possible as long as you have a good idea. But think about connecting the unconnected. I think that's a big area in Africa.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure Jake is happy with this great answer. Going to Qatar, Sindhu. What are some of the essential skills that aerospace students must possess and learn beyond the classroom?
Yeah, happy to take a shot at it. In my case, it was very, very important. All of the projects that I was involved in while being at university, for instance, on my spare time, I learned as much from those projects, from involving and working with the people within those projects, trying to find solutions to the real challenges that we were facing through the delivery of that. Was really helpful and really set up the base of I think not only the knowledge but a lot of the soft skills that are required actually to work within the space industry these days. So I would strongly encourage people actually to be involved in real projects where they see the results, even if it's just starting by sending a balloon to the stratosphere, flying a camera or a new sensor, and trying to enjoy that experience of learning by doing.
Thank you, Raphael. Anybody else would like to jump in? Yes, go ahead, Joanna.
So the one thing that I would always advise people is work, be it in a shop, a restaurant, a pub, a bar, making coffee, whatever it is, because then you see how a business works. You start to understand, what the revenues are, what the costs are, how you can try and make things more efficient, how you can sort of run things smoother so the process works better, all of those kind of things. Yes, it might not be in aerospace, but you're starting to learn all those skills. And also, really importantly, you're learning how to deal with customers, how to present yourself, how to give a really clear pitch, how to look welcoming, how to engage, all of those soft skills that are so important. So I don't think we can underestimate those holiday jobs, part-time jobs, whatever else we might do when we're at university, because they do add that breadth of skills on top of the academics.
Perfect, thank you. Going to David, joining us from London, are there any major developments in space policy? How will those impact entrepreneurs looking to launch satellites?
I'm happy to take this one. So in terms of, I guess, developments in space policy, one of the things that we've definitely seen recently is this emergence of, a huge growth in the number of satellites that are being launched into orbit, right? And so that has really, I guess, triggered some really important questions in terms of how we're managing the orbital environment and how we're going to do that safely and sustainably in the future. So a few key areas that I think have been evolving and emerging when we think about space policy is firstly space traffic management. So how are operators communicating with each other and making sure that there aren't any collisions in space, right? So that traffic element is really important. And the second is thinking about debris mitigation. So, if you're launching a satellite into space, you need to be able to demonstrate how you're going to mitigate the growth of space debris in the future as a result of your operations. And that's something that's going to become increasingly important in the future. And so when we're thinking about entrepreneurship and starting space companies, I think that is going to be incredibly important to be thinking about in the future, not just as an afterthought when your satellites reach the end of operations, but how can we kind of integrate that thought of space safety and sustainability throughout the design life and throughout the business life of a space company.
Perfect. Thank you, Harriet. And maybe we can cover in 30 seconds the last question from Uzair at Oxford. Is private investment currently more interested in Earth-based solutions or in general space exploration infrastructure? Who wants to cover this one very quickly?
I can take that one.
Josephine, please.
I would say it's both. It depends on the type of investor you are, right? So for our fund, I think we're more interested in, we're not involved in deep space exploration, but other venture funds are invested, in that area. So it really depends on your investment objective and your time horizon.
Okay. Thank you, Josephine. Well, this brings us to the very end of our time. Let me finish by quoting some words from Raphael. It was in 2009 when a small team of fellow aerospace students and I launched a stratospheric balloon equipped with an experimental payload, including a camera. It was a simple and cheap payload container that was assembled in a matter of a few days. When the container had returned to Earth after being launched to over 25 kilometers altitude, the resulting images from the edge of the atmosphere totally blew our minds. Seeing the curvature of the Earth under a bright sun in a pitch black sky remained an inspiration for a lifetime. If a small group of students could achieve this in few days, the sky was literally no longer the limit. This profound experience became my inspiration of making the opportunities of space accessible to anyone. I hope you all have a lot of inspirations like the one Raphael had, and one day you can develop a space venture that contributes to make a better world. Thank you to all the panelists, Harriet, Joanna, Josephine, and Raphael for joining us today, sharing your knowledge and experience, and for such an insightful and rich debate. I also want to thank everyone who has joined us from various parts of the world for this fourth episode of the Smart Space series here at Oxford. It has been hugely enlightening and incredibly interesting. And on behalf of Saïd Business School and the University of Oxford, thank you so much.